faithful poetry travelers. I am happy to be joining you once more from the San Francisco Bay Area. I am Phynne Belle, a poet, writer, and podcaster, and your host of the Poets Lighthouse. Today, joining us is poet Gayelene Carbis. Gayelene is an award-winning writer of poetry, prose, and plays. Her first book of poetry, Anecdotal Evidence, which is by Five Island Press, was awarded finalist in the International Book Awards for Poetry in 2019. In 2020, she won the My Brother Jack Poetry Award and was a finalist in Bruce Dawes and Woorilla Poetry Prizes. Gayelene has been shortlisted for and awarded numerous poetry and short story prizes, including Montreal International Poetry Prize and the Fish Poetry and Memoir Prize, Ireland. She has read her work and had plays produced in Australia and overseas, including India, Malaysia, Edinburgh, Oxford, New York, and Canada. Gayelene was awarded a poetry residency scholarship at the Banff Centre in Canada, mentored by Karen Solie, Tim Lilburn, and Tim Bowling. Gayelene teaches creative writing at various universities and community organizations and is a writer in residence in schools. She has recently completed her second book of poetry and is working on a collection of short stories. Gayelene is an Australian writer of Irish, Cornish, Chinese background. She lives in Melbourne. Gayelene, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing well. The sun is out.
That's lovely. I can see. It's nice and bright in your room. So you have been so very kind to share a lot of recent examples of your writing. So I spent the last few weeks just with the pleasure of sitting with your poetry and your writing prior to our session today. And so I am just excited to delve right into your poetry. So Gayelene, will you be so wonderful as to start our show officially today with a reading of your first poem and tell us a little bit more about it to begin with, and then go right into it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the first poem I'll read is the first poem in my book, Anecdotal Evidence. It's called Apollo Bay. Apollo Bay, summer, family, cassettes in the car, my music, my father driving, my mother critical of something, anything, my brother complaining about the music, my mother's mother a barrier between me and my brother in the back seat, my mother impatient with her, my father happy to have her and always nice to her. The motel where my friend with the long black hair and the dark skin waited for me every summer, the owner's daughter, one of 8, just like my mother, and dark too, a bit Chinese like us, or maybe Aboriginal. Table tennis, sitting down at the piano and playing The Little Donkey. At night, my grandmother, in her old petticoat, undresses in the dark, putting on the old cotton nightie without me ever seeing her naked. Then into the big double bed my half-deaf grandmother sings half the night, The Girl with the Black Velvet Band, and It's a Long Way to Tipperary, and the one she left to all of us, the one we remember. You'll only have one mother, you'll miss her when she's gone, you'll never find another with a love for you so strong. She never really heard me sing, except yelling down her ear sometimes, but she knew I loved it, loved to sing, loved music, knew it was my music that went with us all the way from Melbourne to Apollo Bay every year. So she sang for me in the big double bed half the night because she believed I liked it.
Thank you. So much of that seemed just so familiar to me, having gone with family on road trips and having to just navigate so many things that were on the surface, but also roiling underneath the surface. So thank you for that lovely reading. Folks, we will take a short break, but when we get back, dear viewers, let us talk a little bit more about the work shared. Welcome back from the break. So, Gayelene just shared with us her first poem, Apollo Bay. And I noticed that in recent poems that you had shared with me, including this poems such as Remnants and Love Like This, you navigate in such a delicate fashion, but it's a fashion that still carries a lot of weight with it. And this is over that often thorny topic of family and relationships with other family members. What is your feeling at the completion of these type of poems?
That's a really interesting question. Because I write so unconsciously, there's a sort of detachment, a distance in a way, so that poems like the one that I just read, Apollo Bay, I wrote that very quickly, so it's like an unconscious outpouring. And originally it began as a prose poem, which means I rushed across the page. It doesn't look like that on the page now. So at the end of composing a poem or writing a poem, I don't think I feel anything in particular.
Okay.
But it's in hindsight, it's after I've had some time to think about the poem, or once I've typed it up, or it might already be typed, then it's then that feelings will overcome me, or I'll be filled with feelings about what I've written. And that can be quite tricky territory at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can imagine a lot to unpack there. But I hope that somehow that it is catharsis for you to do so. Hopefully,
Oh, yes,
yes,
absolutely. Yeah. Ultimately, I mean, I don't write just for catharsis,
okay,
it's about craft and art and all of those
yes,
things. But I think that, like so many writers, that act of writing is not just expressing yourself, but a way of how you deal with the world.
mm-hmm.
And how I navigate relationships, a huge part of that is writing about them.
Yes, yes. That's no, I love that. I love that how you had expressed that. So I understand you do have another poem that you would like to share with us. This one called, I love the title of this, by the way, Cake in the Time of COVID. Please go ahead and tell us a little bit more about that as well. And please read that for us if you can.
Oh, thank you. Um, I have actually been writing a series of poems during this coronavirus, COVID poems, you might call them. And this is one of them. It's called Cake in the Time of COVID. A friend brought me the highest, hugest chocolate cake I'd ever seen on a plate that he left in a red bag on my doorstep. Later, he told me he felt bad for leaving only half of the highest, hugest cake I'd ever had. My brother ate more than half of it. Next time, I'm going to cut the cake, or else I might have to kill my brother. It was my cake, and he was lucky to even get any. He made me a cup of tea. He made me and my mother a cup of tea, the way he always does. But that doesn't make up for the cake. That was my cake from my friend. I don't think I can ever forgive my brother. But as they say, life is long and life is so short, and we shall see.
Oh, goodness, I love that. So, in that poem, I just love how it gives us a little peek into your day to day during this this lockdown period, this pandemic lockdown period. And I love how you are able to bring this very keen observation and this sense of humor to the poems, you know, whether it be fully intentional or it's just kind of like maybe a side product. And so I understand that you said a while ago that you write a lot of you actually wrote a lot. Do you feel that there had been a shift or a change, or that a particular type of poetry flourished during this period?
Well, actually, this period has been very productive for
Mm,
me personally because in the first year of the pandemic, I was writing and rewriting and editing my second collection of poetry. So I used that time to work very, very steadily on
mhm,
that. And then subsequent to that, these, I'm not even sure if I will call them poems. They're hybrid texts, I think. Um, but I've been writing a whole lot of poems, hybrid texts, to do with everyday family life and spending time with my mother and my brother. And what has changed is my attunement, in particular, to how my mother uses language.
mhm.
And so, and how funny she is without meaning to be often. So, it's been a joy to do that, to pay that kind of attention. Mm.
Yes, I am taken in by that term you used. You said hybrid ticks. Is that tell me a little bit more about that if you can. Is that your way of like brainstorming? Is that ideas that come to you? That was just really that's a term I've never heard. So I was wondering, is it in reference to your creative process?
Um, well, hybrid is a mixture of text, you know.
Yes. Okay.
But I think with my work often straddles poetry and prose.
I see. Okay.
So there are poems which I would definitely and definitively call poems. And then there are other texts that I'll take along to my poetry workshopping group, and I might say, I'm not sure if this is a poem or not. So it will straddle, you know, it could be a prose poem,
Hmm.
or it might not even be a prose poem at all. And these categories sometimes can be artificial and a bit
Yes.
silly at times,
Yeah.
but they can be useful too, you know.
They can be
Mm.
useful. Yeah, I agree. But you know, like I like when things are not. Well, there is a question that's not yet settled, and sometimes it goes into the realm of being experimental. I like that idea where it's not yet settled. So yeah, so that gives me a lot. I have to revisit your poems now and look at them to see if this occurs, and you know, if you're creating this new hybrid, as you know, as you said. Um, awesome. So you have a final teeny taste of a poem called, you know, aptly called Morsels, that you that you want to share as well. And I would love for you to share that with our audience.
Thank you. This is called Morsels, and this poem comes from my second collection, which I've only recently sent out to publishers. Morsels for Brenda Palmer. Here are the crumbs you left me, fallen on floorboards in a line that leads to the closed front door. Here is the softness that's come over me, the swollen tenderness, bruising at the slightest touch. There are the cards you hold in your hand, cryptic. A friend wrote to me using the word quicksand, and I reeled from it. I tear at cuticles, the edges of skin bleed. The friend said, "Still, you keep bobbing up to the surface. You're still swimming." And that's true. But who wants the love of their life, summed up as quicksand? I head out the front door. I leave a trail so you can find me.
I like how you, especially in this particular poem, you lovingly cradle each word and line. It brings an extra something to the how poignant the poem is. So I wanted to pull out of that poem the lines. A friend wrote to me using the word quicksand, and I reeled from it. And I have to admit, reading that, I reread it, I said it out loud, and I felt dizzy from that line. I felt dizzy from repeating it, because to me, it, it felt like a sense of love and life being fleeting, and that's something that we often don't like to think about. So it repeating it to myself and just kind of cradling that word, those lines myself, it did leave me a little out of breath for some reason. Can you tell me a little bit more, if at all possible, the story behind that line, and then the poem in general?
Mm. Um, that's really interesting what you said about feeling breathless and dizzy, and um, it's amazing the effect of words. Those were reactions I never imagined. um, so the story behind the poem in this second collection, I do write. There are a number of poems which are about love and loss and longing, and so that is about a particular relationship in my life. Um, and but I was thinking this morning, I was thinking about this poem, and I was thinking, even though the poem is very specific in
Mhm.
terms of its derivation, in terms of being about a particular relationship in my life, um, I was thinking, but it's more general than that as well. And what you said about the fleetingness of life is so pertinent and resonant right now. And I think it's impossible now to look at poems in my second collection of poetry, which hopefully will be published sometime soon. Um, it's impossible to not look at them through the lens of the pandemic,
Mhm.
so that gives it another layer that was never intended. But I was thinking that about the fact that this particular poem isn't just about the loss of the particular relationship, but many losses, losses of friends or people you love who've been close to you, and we've all had those.
Mhm.
Mm.
Mm. Wow, yeah, it went from being micro to encompassing so much more than that. When you mentioned about the pandemic, seeing it through the lens of pandemic, that was powerful. And yeah, definitely worth exploring again. I have so much work again to do. I feel, to reread your poems in that new lens. I'm feeling very eager to do that and read it with all those other wider spectrum in mind. Thank you for that so much. So we come to the end of our interview, and I wanted to ask one last question before we, say our goodbyes. But it was a delight. So when you write about your real life experiences, and you're able to push these ideas and these occurrences that you mentioned in your writing into a realm where sometimes it becomes a little bit more whimsy, I guess you could say. Does this in a way allow you as a poet to safely visit and coax out this person that you are, that you may sometimes have to hide in the background or put in the back burner to be the poet? Are you able to safely bring out this person and share it with other people without feeling like you are being left vulnerable, I guess you could say?
I think one of the most frequent commentaries that I have received on my work, both for my poetry, my plays, my short stories, etc., is that I'm a brave and honest writer, that there's an authenticity to my work. And I don't feel so much my own vulnerability, but more, I have more concerns about other people that I write about. And that's where I feel more vulnerable. I mean, yes, my work is very exposing, but it's very exposing and revelatory. It's very autobiographical, but that's how I write, and I can't imagine writing any other way, So I guess I don't feel greatly vulnerable for myself, as I said. It's more about writing about others that's tricky territory.
Okay. Yeah. That is a unexpected, surprising, but very satisfying answer. I know that a lot of poets, myself included, we are kind of traversing that, wanting to reveal ourselves, but wanting to maintain that privacy of of what is vulnerable and what is sacred. So in our poetry, we are releasing a lot of our, of what's personal to us. But then, I guess we always want to keep that one little last bit to ourselves, where we're not giving it out to anybody else. So I kind of really like your answer. Is reassuring to me that we can flip the script a little bit and go the other way. So, Gayelene, thank you so much for joining us. Would you please tell us before we leave a little bit about what's in the works for you? Anything exciting and new coming up?
Thank you so much for having me, Phynne.
You're so welcome.
So, as I mentioned, I've just recently completed a second collection of poetry.
Okay,
So I've sent that out.
lovely.
And I'm currently working on a collection of short stories. And I also have a number of the COVID poems, which I think will be perhaps a hybrid text collection. something like that. And I am thinking about doing a PhD, but I've been thinking about that for a while, so that's still at the back of my mind. It would be in creative writing, and I have a number of different projects that I'm thinking about.
A lot sounds exciting. I look forward to, especially the COVID pieces. That would be from the little taste that I got. I'm craving more of that, and I can't say that for a lot of things having associated with COVID. But I look forward to yours. Absolutely.
Thank you. That's
You're
lovely.
welcome. So we want to thank our wonderful guest, Gayelene, for being with us here today. And I want to also thank our faithful Poets Lighthouse followers for tuning in. Please do check out more about Gayelene and her book, Anecdotal Evidence, at https://5islandpress.com/authors/Gayelene Carbis. I think I did that right. We hope you will support all the programs put out by the Poetry Global Network, and by subscribing to our YouTube channel and liking and sharing our videos. I hope everyone has a lovely evening. Thank you.
Thank you.